Daddy doesn't know about us, does he? The small voice cut through the Manhattan boardroom like a blade through silk. 20 executives turned in their chairs, contracts forgotten, pens suspended mid-signature. Dorian Crestwood's hand froze on the acquisition papers, the deal that would make him the youngest man to ever own half of Wall Street's real estate. His jaw tightened as he lifted his gaze to the glass doors. She stood there, Mia Chen, 5 years older, 5 years more beautiful, 5 years more dangerous to everything he'd built. Her designer suit couldn't hide the exhaustion in her shoulders, the desperation in her stance. But it was the 2 children flanking her that made his blood turn to ice. The boy, maybe 6 years old, had Dorian's exact shade of midnight hair, the same sharp cheekbones that photographers love to capture. The girl, smaller, clutched a worn teddy bear with one hand and her mother's fingers with the other. When she tilted her head, studying him with curious hazel eyes, Dorian saw his grandmother's portrait come to life. "Mommy said we're not supposed to bother you at work," the boy whispered, loud enough for every board member to hear. "But Lucy's sick, and we don't have anywhere else to go." The girl, Lucy, coughed, a wet, rattling sound that made Mia pull her closer. "Mr. Crestwood?" His CFO's voice cracked. Should we continue?" Dorian couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The hostile takeover documents blurred beneath his hands. 5 years ago, he'd made his choice. Mia or the empire. Love or legacy. He'd chosen stone and steel and stock options. "You said you'd call." Mia's voice carried across the boardroom, steady despite the tears tracking down her cheeks. "After Prague. You promised you'd call." Prague. The conference where he'd told her to choose, him or her medical residency. Where she'd begged for time, for compromise, for anything but ultimatums. Where he'd walked away because Crestwood men didn't wait, didn't bend, didn't lose. "Is that man our daddy?" Lucy's fevered whisper might as well have been a gunshot. The boardroom held its breath. 20 of the most powerful people in New York suddenly became invisible, watching their untouchable CEO face the only hostile takeover he'd never prepared for. Dorian's empire built on his father's ashes, fortified by ruthless decisions, defended by an army of lawyers, trembled on the edge of 3 words he'd never thought he'd hear. "Answer her, Dorian," Mia's voice broke. "Tell your daughter if you're her father." The acquisition papers crumpled in his fist. Behind him, the Manhattan skyline glittered with buildings bearing his name. Before him stood the only deal he'd ever walked away from, and the consequences he'd never calculated. The boy stepped forward, small shoulders squared with inherited pride. "We don't need him, Mom. We've been fine without Marcus." Mia's warning came too late. The name hit Dorian like a physical blow. Marcus, his grandfather's name. The man who'd built the first Crestwood fortune with his bare hands, who died clutching Dorian's teenage promise to never let love make him weak. "Mr. Crestwood?" His lawyer's prompt felt distant, unimportant. "The Koreans are waiting for your signature. This deal. Get out." The words scraped from Dorian's throat. "All of you, get out. What would you do if the life you built crumbled in front of everyone?" Stay tuned, because Rich Billionaire Romance Stories dives headfirst into secrets that rewrite destinies. The boardroom emptied in seconds. 20 executives fled like startled birds, abandoning briefcases and dignity in their rush to escape the explosion they sensed coming. The Korean investors' protests died behind closed doors. Silence descended, broken only by Lucy's labored breathing and the hum of the air conditioning. 5 years, Mia said, her voice steady now that they were alone. 5 years of raising them by myself. 5 years of Marcus asking why other kids have fathers. 5 years of Lucy drawing pictures of a daddy she's never met. Dorian stood slowly, his 6'3" frame unfolding from the Italian leather chair. Each step toward them felt like crossing a minefield. "Mia, don't." She held up a hand, and he noticed the absent wedding ring, the calluses from double shifts, the exhaustion that money couldn't cure. We're not here for reunions or explanations. Lucy needs treatment, specialized treatment, the kind my resident's salary can't cover. I'll write a check. The words came automatically, the billionaire's solution to every problem. Marcus laughed, a bitter sound too old for his ears. We don't want your money. Marcus, please. Mia touched her son's shoulder. Let me handle this. Why? So he can throw cash at us and make us disappear again? The boy's eyes, Dorian's eyes, blazed with fury. I heard you crying, Mom, every night for months. I know what he did. Lucy tugged on her brother's sleeve. Marcus, you promised. No fighting. Another cough shook her small frame. My chest hurts, Mommy. Dorian moved without thinking, dropping to one knee beside his daughter. This close, he could see the fever flush on her cheeks, hear the wheeze in her breathing. His hand hovered near her forehead, afraid to touch, afraid to claim what he'd denied. It's okay, sweetheart, he heard himself say. We're going to make you better. Lucy studied him with those hazel eyes, his grandmother's eyes, his sister's eyes before the accident that had shaped his father's coldness. Are you really my daddy? The question hung between them like a blade. Yes, Dorian said, the word cracking something open inside him. I'm your daddy. Marcus made a disgusted sound. Now you admit it? When do we need something? I didn't know. The confession tasted like ash. Mia, I swear I didn't know, because you blocked my number, changed your email. Had your security turned me away when I tried to find you? Mia's control finally cracked. I was 3 months pregnant, Dorian, scared, alone, and you erased me like a bad investment. The truth of it hit him like a physical blow. He'd been so thorough, so determined to cut away the weakness she represented. New phone, new contacts, new life. The clean break his father had always preached. The Prague conference, he said slowly. You were trying to tell me. I was trying to tell you I was pregnant. That's why I needed time. Why I couldn't just abandon my residency. Tears flowed freely now. But you gave me an ultimatum instead. You or medicine. As if loving you meant giving up everything else I was. Lucy reached out with one small hand, touching the tears on her mother's face. Don't cry, Mommy. The scary man said he'd make me better. I'm not scary, Dorian protested weakly. Marcus snorted. You made our mom cry for 5 years. That makes you the scariest man I know. The words landed like bullets, each one true. Dorian Crestwood, who'd faced down corporate raiders, who'd built an empire on the ashes of his father's failures, who'd never lost a negotiation, knelt on his own boardroom floor, defeated by 2 children he'd never known existed. What kind of treatment? He forced himself to focus on what mattered. What does Lucy need? Experimental therapy. Not FDA approved yet, only available in Switzerland. Mia wiped her eyes, shifting back to doctor mode. The waiting list is 2 years unless you can buy your way to the front, Dorian finished. That's why you're here. I'm here because I'm desperate. The admission cost her, he could see it in the way her shoulders sagged. Because I've sold everything, borrowed everything, tried everything. Because my daughter is dying and her father is the only person I know who can save her. Dying. The word echoed in the boardroom, bouncing off the walls covered in his achievements. Dying. His daughter. The daughter he'd never held, never sung to, never watched take her first steps. Was dying. There's a catch, Mia continued. The program requires both parents' consent, both parents' presence for the duration of treatment, 6 months minimum. Now he understood. Not just money, time, presence, everything he'd refused to give 5 years ago. You want me to leave my company? Not a question. I want you to choose your daughter's life over your next acquisition. Mia's eyes hardened. But maybe that's still too much to ask from Dorian Crestwood. Lucy coughed again, doubling over with the force of it. When she straightened, there were spots of blood on her small hand. Mommy? Fear crept into her voice. Am I going to die like the girl in my hospital room? No, baby, no. Mia gathered her close, but her eyes stayed on Dorian. Your daddy's going to help us, aren't you, Dorian? The challenge in her voice mixed with desperation. She was giving him one last chance, not at love, not at forgiveness, but at redemption. One chance to be the man who chose his children over his empire. Behind him, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan sprawled in all its glory. His kingdom, his legacy, everything his father had started and he'd multiplied tenfold. Before him, Lucy wheezed in her mother's arms while Marcus stood guard, 6 years old and already prepared to defend his family against the father who'd abandoned them. Mr. Crestwood? His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. The Koreans are threatening to walk. They need an answer in the next 5 minutes or the deal is dead. The deal. $20 billion. The crown jewel that would make him untouchable. 5 years of negotiations about to pay off. Lucy's cough rattled through the room again. Mr. Crestwood, did you hear me? 5 minutes or we lose everything. Dorian looked at his daughter, at his son, at the woman he'd loved and left. The choice that had seemed so clear 5 years ago now revealed itself as the greatest miscalculation of his life. Tell the Koreans, he said, never taking his eyes off his family, that Dorian Crestwood is no longer available. He reached for the phone on the conference table, dialing a number he knew by heart. Dr. Kellerman? It's Dorian Crestwood. I need your help. My daughter. The words still felt foreign, impossible. My daughter needs immediate care and transport to Switzerland. As he spoke, making arrangements, setting aside his life, Lucy watched him with those hazel eyes. When he finished, she asked in a small voice, Does this mean you're staying? Yeah, Princess, Dorian said, the endearment coming from somewhere deep and instinctive. Daddy's staying. Marcus crossed his arms, unconvinced. For how long? Until she's better? Until you get bored? The accusation stung because it was fair. How could he promise forever, when he'd already broken that promise once? I don't know, Dorian admitted. But I'm going to try. Trying isn't enough, Marcus shot back. Mom tried alone for 5 years. Marcus, Mia started. No, he's right. Dorian met his son's gaze. Trying isn't enough. But it's where I have to start. The boardroom door burst open. Sir, I'm sorry, but the Koreans insist. His CFO stopped short, taking in the scene. Should I tell them you're in a family emergency? Family. The word Dorian had spent 5 years avoiding. Tell them the truth, Dorian said. Tell them Dorian Crestwood just discovered what's actually worth fighting for. The Gulfstream G650 touched down at Teterboro Airport at 3:47 a.m., its sleek frame cutting through Jersey fog like a knife through smoke. Dorian Crestwood descended the stairs, his Italian leather shoes hitting American soil for the first time in 3 weeks. Switzerland had changed everything, and nothing. Welcome back, Mr. Crestwood. His driver held the Bentley door open. The board is assembled at headquarters as requested. Dorian nodded, sliding into leather seats that cost more than most people's cars. Through tinted windows, Manhattan's skyline emerged from darkness, each illuminated building a testament to his reach. The Crestwood Tower dominated them all, 82 floors of glass and steel that scraped the sky like an accusation. His phone buzzed. 14 missed calls from board members, 37 from international partners, 0 from the only person whose call he'd answer at any hour. Sir? The driver glanced in the rearview mirror. The penthouse or the office? Office. Sleep was for men who didn't have empires to salvage and daughters in Swiss hospitals. The Bentley glided through empty streets, past shadows of homeless men huddled in doorways. Once, Dorian might have seen them as failures, weak men who'd let life defeat them. Now he wondered if they had children somewhere, if they'd chosen wrong at some crucial moment, if they lay awake remembering better days. Crestwood Tower's lobby echoed with his footsteps. Security guards straightened, their surprise evident despite professional masks. The CEO, who never missed a day, had vanished for 3 weeks without explanation, leaving chaos in his wake. The executive elevator rose silently, carrying him toward the boardroom where 12 of the most powerful people in New York waited to crucify him. Dorian, Richard Blackstone, his CFO, stood as he entered. "We were beginning to wonder if you'd abdicated entirely." 11 other faces turned toward him, stone-cold expressions hiding calculations. How weak was he? How vulnerable? Who would strike first? "Gentlemen, ladies." Dorian took his seat at the head of the table, the throne he'd occupied for 7 years. "I assume you have questions." "Questions?" Margaret Chen, no relation to Mia, though the name still made him flinch, laughed bitterly. "You disappeared during the Korean acquisition. $20 billion, Dorian, gone, because you had some kind of breakdown in front of witnesses. I had a family emergency. You don't have a family." The words came from Harrison Wells, his mentor, the man who'd guided him after his father's death. "That was your strength, remember? No weaknesses, no distractions. No, I have 2 children." The admission fell into silence like a stone into still water. "A son and daughter I've just learned about. My daughter is ill. She required immediate treatment in Switzerland." The boardroom erupted. Voices overlapped, accusations flew. Stock prices were quoted like casualties of war. Dorian let them rage, studying the city beyond the windows. Somewhere out there, in a modest apartment in Queens, Mia was probably awake too, checking her phone for updates from the Swiss medical team. "Enough." His voice cut through the chaos. "Yes, I have children. Yes, I've been to Switzerland. Yes, the Korean deal is dead. What else would you like to discuss?" "Your fitness to lead this company." Margaret's voice could have frozen hellfire. A CEO who abandons a crucial negotiation for personal matters, for his dying daughter. Dorian met her gaze steadily. "Would you have preferred I let her die to save the deal?" Uncomfortable shifting around the table. Even sharks had limits to their coldness. "The board has called a vote of no confidence." Richard slid a folder across the table. "It's scheduled for next month. Unless you can provide assurance that your personal situation won't continue to interfere with operations." Dorian opened the folder, scanning documents that might as well have been his death warrant. 30 days to prove he could balance an empire with fatherhood. 30 days to show weakness wouldn't destroy what 3 generations of Crestwood men had built. "I'll need that month in Switzerland," he said. "My daughter's treatment." "Then you've made your choice." Harrison's disappointment cut deeper than any anger could have, just like your father feared. One moment of weakness and the empire crumbles. "My father died alone." The words escaped before Dorian could stop them. Heart attack in this very room, surrounded by people who feared him but not one who loved him. "Is that the strength you're selling? Your father built this company from nothing. My father built this company on my mother's grave." Dorian stood, suddenly exhausted. "She died when I was 12 because he wouldn't leave a board meeting to take her to the hospital. Said she was being dramatic. By the time his secretary convinced him to go, the appendix had burst." Silence descended again, heavier this time. Everyone knew the story but no one spoke of it. Alexander Crestwood's greatest failure, buried under decades of success. "I'll be in Switzerland for the next month," Dorian continued. "Richard, you'll handle day-to-day operations. Margaret, the Singapore expansion is yours to lead. Harrison." He paused, looking at the man who'd shaped him. "Pray you never have to choose between a deal and your daughter's life." He left them there, 12 titans of industry reduced to confused silence. The elevator descended, carrying him away from everything he'd spent 7 years building. His phone buzzed. "A message from Mia. Lucy's asking for you. The treatment starts tomorrow." For the first time in 3 weeks, something loosened in his chest. Not quite peace, but the absence of war. The Bentley waited outside, engine running. "The penthouse now, sir?" "Yes." Dorian closed his eyes. I need to pack. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of Crestwood Tower, a temple to success that had cost $40 million to design. Italian marble, Japanese wood, French crystal. Every surface whispered wealth and taste. Yet walking through it now felt like touring a mausoleum. No children's laughter had ever echoed here. No toys cluttered the pristine floors. No crayon marks marred the walls that displayed million-dollar art. His bedroom was a study in monochrome perfection. California king bed that he rarely slept in, preferring to doze on his office couch between deals. Walk-in closet larger than most apartments, filled with suits he wore like armor. On the nightstand, a single photograph in a silver frame. The only personal touch in the entire space, Seraphine. Even after 5 years, her name was a wound that wouldn't heal. In the photo she laughed, at something beyond the camera's view, dark hair whipping in Prague wind, eyes bright with joy he'd extinguished. He'd called her Seraphine, in private moments, when Mia became too common, too real for what they had. His angel, his weakness, his greatest failure until he'd learned about the children. Why did you leave? He asked the photograph, the same question he'd asked every night for 5 years. Except now he knew the answer. She'd left because he'd made her choose. Because he'd been his father's son, demanding absolute surrender, or nothing at all. His phone rang. Harrison. You're making a mistake, son. Probably. Dorian pulled suits from hangers, choosing ones that could withstand hospital visits and children's hands. But it's my mistake to make. Your father would. My father is dead. The words came out harder than intended. And all his strength, all his focus, all his sacrifices bought him a heart attack at 53 and a son who's repeating his mistakes. You're nothing like Alexander. I'm exactly like him. Dorian found himself laughing, bitter and tired. I let the woman I loved walk away because she wouldn't abandon her dreams for mine. I missed the birth of my children because I was too proud to take her calls. I built this perfect, empty castle and called it success. Harrison's silence stretched across the connection. The difference is, Dorian continued, I still have time to choose differently. The board won't wait. They smell blood in the water. Then let them circle. He zipped the suitcase closed. I've got a plane to catch. Dorian. He ended the call, looking around the penthouse one last time. Tomorrow he'd be in Switzerland, sitting beside a hospital bed, trying to earn forgiveness from a 6-year-old who didn't know she held his heart in her small hands. The photograph of Seraphine watched him go, frozen in eternal joy, a reminder of the man he'd been before. Ambition consumed everything soft and human in him. But perhaps, it wasn't too late to find that man again. The elevator descended through floors of his empire, each one representing another year of choosing stone over flesh, contracts over connection, the throne over the heart. At ground level, dawn was breaking over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere in Switzerland, Lucy was waking up too, facing another day of treatments with a courage he'd never had to show. Airport, sir? The driver asked. Yes. Dorian settled into the leather seats. And call the pilot. Tell him we're going home. The driver looked confused. But sir, you just arrived home. No. Dorian watched the city blur past, all its glittering promises and empty victories. I just left it. The merger announcement was supposed to be Dorian's resurrection. 4 weeks in Switzerland had steadied Lucy's condition, though not cured it. The experimental treatment showed promise, but required months more. He'd returned to New York for 48 hours only, long enough to prove to the board he could still command an empire while being a father. The conference hall buzzed with 300 of Manhattan's elite. Media crews adjusted cameras, financial reporters poised tablets, and his board of directors sat in the front row like judges at an execution. The Castellan Industries merger would create the largest real estate conglomerate in North America, his masterstroke to silence doubts about his leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, Dorian stood at the podium, Every inch the billionaire CEO in his charcoal Armani. Today marks a historic moment for Crestwood Enterprises. The doors at the back of the hall opened. He continued speaking, trained to ignore disruptions. Security would handle whatever. "Daddy!" Lucy's voice carried across 300 stunned attendees, like a bell through fog. Dorian's words died mid-sentence as his daughter broke free from Mia's grip, racing down the center aisle in a yellow sundress and light-up sneakers that blinked with each step. The cameras swiveled, reporters lifted phones, board members turned in their seats. Mia followed Marcus beside her, both dressed formally but clearly out of place among Manhattan's elite. She carried Lucy's portable oxygen tank, the clear tubes snaking to the cannula beneath his daughter's nose, a visible reminder of why he'd abandoned everything. "Lucy, stop," Mia called, but the little girl was already climbing the podium stairs, her small hands reaching for Dorian. 300 people held their breath. Dorian dropped to one knee, catching Lucy as she launched herself into his arms. "Princess, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Switzerland with Dr. Kellerman. We flew all night." Lucy's excitement made her breathless. "Mommy said we could surprise you. Are you surprised?" Behind her, Mia reached the podium, Marcus at her side. The boy's expression was stone, so like Dorian's own when facing enemies. "I'm sorry," Mia said quietly, but the microphone caught every word, broadcasting it to the hall. "She insisted on seeing you. The treatment's going well, but she's been asking for her father every day, and you thought wrong." Margaret Chen's voice cut through the moment like a scalpel. "This is a closed business function." Lucy turned in Dorian's arms, studying the cold woman in the front row. "Are you the mean lady Daddy told us about? The one who doesn't like children?" Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Margaret's face flushed purple. "Mr. Crestwood," a reporter called out, "can you confirm these are your children? The rumors have been circulating since your absence." "They're not rumors." Dorian stood, lifting Lucy with him. She weighed nothing, bird bones and courage. "This is my daughter Lucy, my son Marcus, and—" He paused, looking at Mia. "Their mother, Dr. Mia Chen." The hall erupted, cameras flashed like lightning, questions flew from every direction. "How long have you known? Is this why you abandoned the Korean deal? What does this mean for the merger?" Marcus stepped forward, placing himself between the crowd and his family. 6 years old and already protecting what mattered. "Stop yelling. You're scaring Lucy." Indeed, Lucy had buried her face in Dorian's neck, overwhelmed by the noise and attention. Her breathing hitched. Stress was dangerous for her condition. "Enough." Dorian's voice commanded silence. "Yes, I have children. Yes, I've been in Switzerland for their medical care. No, this doesn't affect the merger or my ability to lead this company. Doesn't it affect?" Richard Blackstone stood, his CFO mask cracking to show real anger. "You've been lying to us for weeks. Secret children, secret medical trips, secret life. How can we trust anything you say?" "I never lied." Dorian adjusted Lucy in his arms, feeling her heart race against his chest. "I simply chose not to share personal information that didn't impact business." "Everything impacts business." Harrison Wells joined the attack. "Your father understood that. No secrets, no surprises, no weaknesses for enemies to exploit." "My father died alone," Dorian repeated the words that had become his mantra. "I won't make that mistake. You already have." Margaret gestured to the media circus. "Look around. Your personal drama is now front-page news. Crestwood stock will plummet. The Castellan board will withdraw. You've destroyed everything for what? A woman who left you? Children you didn't even know existed? Children I didn't know about because I was too much like my father to listen. The admission cost him, but Lucy's weight in his arms made it necessary. Because I chose this," he gestured to the opulent hall, "over family." "Daddy," Lucy whispered, "I don't feel good." Mia stepped forward immediately, checking the oxygen levels. "She needs to rest, the altitude change and stress, then leave." Margaret's suggestion dripped venom. Take your bastards and go back to whatever hole you crawled out of." The word hung in the air like a poison. Marcus moved before anyone could stop him, marching up to Margaret with fury that belonged on older shoulders. "Don't you dare call us that. We're not bastards. We're Crestwoods." "Marcus." Mia reached for him. "No, Mom." The boy faced the board like David before Goliath. "You told us our father was important, that he had responsibilities, but these people?" He looked at each board member with contempt that mirrored Dorian's own. "They're just bullies in expensive suits." A reporter's voice carried over the chaos. "Mr. Crestwood, are you acknowledging paternity? Will you be marrying Dr. Chen?" "I'm acknowledging that I'm a father," Dorian said carefully. "Everything else is private. Nothing's private anymore." Harrison's disappointment cut deep. "You've made sure of that," Lucy coughed, the sound wet and painful. Dorian felt her forehead, too warm. The stress was triggering something. "We need to go," Mia said urgently. "Now, go then." Margaret stood, addressing the crowd. "Let the record show that Dorian Crestwood has chosen personal matters over professional duties. Again. Let the record show," Dorian's voice carried over hers, "that I'm choosing my daughter's life over your profit margins." He descended from the podium, Lucy in his arms, Mia and Marcus flanking him. 300 people parted like the Red Sea, some recording, others whispering, all witnessing the fall of a titan. "Mr. Crestwood." A young reporter blocked their path. "One question, do you regret the choices that led to this moment?" Dorian looked at Lucy's flushed face, at Marcus's protective stance, at Mia's desperate concern. Then he looked back at the board, at the empire he'd built on his father's ashes, at the throne that had cost him everything real. "I regret every choice that kept me from them," he said, "and I'll spend whatever time I have left making it right." Security finally intervened, clearing a path to the exit. As they reached the doors, Lucy lifted her head from his shoulder. "Daddy, are those people why you couldn't visit us before?" The innocent question echoed through the hall, picked up by every microphone, recorded by every camera. "Yes, Princess," Dorian admitted, "but not anymore. Promise? Promise." The doors closed behind them, shutting out the chaos but not its consequences. In the elevator, Mia finally spoke. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought them. But Lucy's been having nightmares, asking for you, and the doctors said familiar comfort might help her healing. You did the right thing." Dorian shifted Lucy's weight, feeling her relaxation against him. "I should have told them weeks ago. They'll destroy you for this." Mia's medical training let her diagnose corporate death as easily as physical illness. Maybe. The elevator descended through his empire, each floor a reminder of what he stood to lose. "But she's worth it." Marcus studied him with those two knowing eyes. "You mean that?" "I'm learning to." The lobby stretched before them, marble and glass and the scattered remains of his reputation. Outside, photographers already gathered, vultures scenting blood. "There's a private exit," Dorian said, "through the parking garage." "Running away?" Marcus challenged. "Strategic retreat." Dorian met his son's gaze. "Sometimes the brave choice is knowing when to fight and when to protect what matters." As they navigated toward safety, Lucy stirred in his arms. "Daddy, will you come back to Switzerland with us?" The question he'd been avoiding, asked by the only person whose answer mattered. "Yes," he said, knowing it meant the end of everything he'd built. "I'm coming home." Behind them, 300 witnesses spread the story like wildfire. By morning, every financial publication would carry the headline, "Crestwood's secret family exposed." Stock would plummet, the board would revolt, the Castellan merger would die. But in that moment, carrying his daughter to safety while his son guarded their backs, and the woman he'd lost guided their way, Dorian Crestwood felt richer than he'd ever been sitting alone on his throne. The empire could crumble. He'd found something worth building instead. The monitors beeped steadily, tracking Lucy's vitals while she slept. Dorian sat beside her bed, still in his merger announcement suit, now wrinkled and stained with her tears. His phone buzzed incessantly. Board members, reporters, lawyers, but he'd stopped checking after the first 100 messages. Her oxygen levels are stabilizing. Mia emerged from a discussion with the attending physician. The stress triggered a minor episode, but she'll be fine. Minor, Dorian repeated the word, tasting its inadequacy. She collapsed in the car. She's been through worse. Mia's clinical tone couldn't hide her exhaustion. The Swiss treatments are working, but her immune system is fragile. Emotional stress, altitude changes, crowds, they all take a toll. Marcus sat in the corner, sketching in a notebook Mia had produced from her bag. He hadn't spoken since they'd arrived, but his eyes tracked every movement, every word. The board called an emergency meeting, Dorian said quietly. They're voting tonight. Harrison texted that I have 2 hours to appear and defend myself, or they'll proceed without me. Then go. Mia checked Lucy's IV drip. We've managed without you before. The words stung because they were true. Every certificate on Mia's apartment wall, every milestone in baby books he'd never seen, every birthday cake with candles he hadn't helped blow out, evidence of their life without him. I'm not leaving. He touched Lucy's hand, so small against his palm. Not again. You can't save your company from a hospital room. I can't save my daughter from the boardroom either. Mia finally looked at him, really looked, and he saw 5 years of single motherhood etched in the lines around her eyes. Since when do you care more about Lucy than Crestwood Enterprises? Since I saw her collapse because my world was too much for her. The admission scraped his throat raw. Since I realized I've been protecting the wrong empire. His phone rang. Harrison's name flashed on the screen. Dorian declined the call. They'll take everything, Mia warned. Your company, your reputation, your fortune. Let them. He studied his daughter's face, seeing his grandmother's features softened by sleep. What good is a fortune if my daughter dies before she can inherit it? Don't be dramatic. She's not dying, isn't she? Dorian met Mia's gaze. You came to my boardroom because traditional treatments failed. You flew across an ocean to beg help from a man who abandoned you because our daughter is running out of time. Mia's composure cracked. The Swiss treatment has a 70% success rate, which means 30% of children die. Stop it. Marcus's voice cut through their tension. You're going to wake her up. Both adults turned to the boy who'd inherited Dorian's sharp edges and Mia's fierce protection. I'm sorry, Dorian began. No, you're not. Marcus set down his pencil. You're scared, both of you. But fighting won't help Lucy. 6 years old and already mediating between his parents. Another failure to add to Dorian's growing collection. What are you drawing? Dorian asked, desperate to change the subject. Marcus hesitated, then showed the sketch. It was their family, stick figures but recognizable. Mia holding Lucy's hand, Marcus standing guard, and off to the side, separated by harsh lines, a lone figure in a suit. That's you, Marcus explained unnecessarily. I used to draw you closer, but Lucy said I should show the truth. The truth. That he stood apart, even when he stood among them. That 5 years of absence had built walls no merger could dissolve. I could be closer, Dorian offered. If you'd let me, Mom let you. She called and wrote and sent pictures. Marcus's accusation held no heat, just fact. You're the one who stayed away. Marcus, Mia warned. It's okay. Dorian faced his son's judgment. He's right. I chose to stay away. I told myself it was better for everyone, that you didn't need me, that I'd only complicate your lives. That's stupid. Marcus returned to his drawing. Everyone needs their dad. The simple truth shattered something in Dorian's chest. Every hostile takeover he'd orchestrated, every competitor he'd crushed, every victory he'd claimed, none had prepared him for the quiet devastation of a child's honesty. His phone buzzed. A message from Richard, 1 hour. Your last chance. The board's gathering, Dorian said. They want me to choose. Haven't you already? Mia adjusted Lucy's blanket. Had he? The merger documents waited in his briefcase unsigned. The presentation that would save his position lay ready on his laptop. All he had to do was leave, perform, conquer, be the man his father had trained him to become. Lucy stirred, whimpering in her sleep. Dorian reached out instinctively, smoothing her hair, and she settled. She has nightmares, Mia explained, about being alone in the dark. The doctors say it's related to her condition, the fear of not waking up. What helps? Knowing someone's there. Marcus usually sleeps in her room, keeps a nightlight on, tells her stories about— Mia stopped. About what? About her daddy. Marcus supplied the answer. I make up stories about why you're gone, saving the world, fighting dragons, building castles for us to live in someday. Each word was a knife between Dorian's ribs. His son had spent years creating fantasies to explain his absence, painting him as a hero when he'd been nothing but a coward. I don't deserve those stories. No, Marcus agreed. But Lucy does. 45 minutes until the board meeting. 45 minutes to save everything he'd built. Dorian looked at his phone, at the messages piling up like digital screams, then powered it off entirely. You're really not going? Mia sounded stunned. Would it matter if I did? They've already decided. Margaret's been planning this coup for months. The family revelation just gave her the ammunition she needed. You could fight. You always fight. I'm tired of fighting the wrong battles. Dorian settled deeper into the uncomfortable hospital chair. Tell me about their birthdays, their first words. Tell me everything I missed. Mia studied him for a long moment, then pulled out her phone. Lucy was born at 3:17 a.m. 7 pounds 2 ounces. She came out fighting, refused to cry until they put her on my chest. Then she wailed loud enough to wake the entire maternity ward. Sounds like her. Dorian smiled at his sleeping daughter. Marcus was easier. Born at sunset, 6:43 p.m. He looked around like he was cataloging everything, making sure it met his standards. The nurse said she'd never seen such a serious newborn. What were their first words? Lucy said no first. Figured out how to refuse before she could ask for anything. Mia scrolled through photos. Marcus said why. Not mama or dada, just why. He's been questioning everything ever since. She showed him pictures, first steps, first day of school, birthday parties in cramped apartments with handmade decorations, his children growing up in snapshots, a life he'd chosen to miss. I sent these to your office, Mia said quietly, every milestone. Your secretary returned them all unopened. I told her to block anything personal. The policy that had seemed so sensible now revealed itself as monstrous. I thought it would be easier, cleaner. For who? For me. The selfishness of it choked him. I convinced myself you were better off without me, that my money would complicate your life, that my world would corrupt them. Your money would have helped. Do you know how many nights I worked to pay for Marcus's school? How many shifts I pulled while Lucy was in daycare? We didn't need your fortune, Dorian. We needed you. 30 minutes until the board meeting. His empire crumbled in real time while he sat in a hospital room, learning the names of his children's teachers and favorite toys. Why Seraphine? Mia asked suddenly. You called me that sometimes. Your angel. But you let your angel fall, because angels aren't meant for men like me. The truth he'd never spoken aloud. My father taught me that love was a weakness, that caring meant losing. After Mom died because he wouldn't leave a meeting, he became stone, told me feelings were luxuries the Crestwood men couldn't afford. So you became him. I became worse. At least he had my mother for 20 years before he lost her. I threw you away before we even had a chance. Lucy's eyes fluttered open, confused and frightened until she saw him. Daddy, you stayed? I stayed, princess. I'm not going anywhere, promise? Her small hand gripped his finger with surprising strength. I promise. 15 minutes until the board meeting. Until Margaret claimed his throne and Harrison wrote his corporate obituary. Until everything Alexander Crestwood had built turned to ash. The mean lady was wrong, Lucy said drowsily. We're not bad words. We're your family. Yes, Dorian agreed, feeling the last of his defenses crumble. You're my family. His phone powered off, couldn't show him the board gathering in his absence, couldn't reveal Margaret's triumph or Harrison's disappointment, couldn't measure the exact moment his empire fell. But Lucy's hand in his measured something infinitely more precious, the moment he chose to build something new from the ruins of what he'd lost. The office felt like a tomb. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across mahogany furniture and awards that no longer mattered. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan glittered below, a kingdom Dorian had lost in the span of 12 hours. He'd left the hospital after Lucy fell back asleep, promising to return by morning. Mia hadn't questioned his need to face the aftermath alone. Some battles required solitude. The elevator chimed, footsteps echoed across marble floors. I thought I'd find you here. Mia stood in the doorway, still in the dress she'd worn to his public execution. But something had changed in her posture, her expression. The desperate mother from the hospital had been replaced by the woman who'd once challenged him in Prague conference rooms. The children? Dorian asked. Asleep. Marcus is reading to Lucy. Hospital security is watching them. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. We need to talk. About what? The board voted. Margaret's interim CEO as of midnight. I'm officially persona non grata in my own company. About why I really came to that boardroom 5 years ago. Mia moved to the windows, studying the city lights. About why I never tried harder to reach you after Prague. Dorian poured himself 3 fingers of bourbon, the bottle his father had opened the day Crestwood Enterprises went public. You were pregnant, scared. I was an ass. End of story. No. Her reflection in the glass looked haunted. That's the story I told myself, the one I told the children, but it's not the truth. She turned, and he saw something in her eyes he'd never noticed before. Guilt. I could have found you, Dorian. Could have shown up at your office, your penthouse, your country club, could have made a scene, forced you to listen. But I didn't. You tried. You called twice. I called twice, left 2 messages, then gave up. Her laugh held no humor. Do you know why? He waited, sensing the ground shifting beneath him. Because part of me was relieved. The admission came out like a confession. Relieved that you'd made the choice for me, that I could raise our children without watching them become line items in your agenda. The words hit harder than any board revolt. Line items? That's what love felt like with you, Dorian. Transactional, scheduled. You loved me between meetings, around mergers, when it was convenient for your empire. She moved closer, her voice gaining strength. Even in Prague, when I told you about the residency, you didn't ask about my dreams. You calculated how they'd impact your plans. I offered you everything. You offered me a cage. Mia's eyes blazed. A beautiful golden cage where I'd be the perfect billionaire's wife, hostess for your parties, ornament for your arm, mother to heirs who'd inherit your coldness along with your fortune. That's not, but the protest died in his throat. Because it was true, every word. I watched you with your father's portrait in your office, saw how you studied it like a blueprint. Alexander Crestwood, who built an empire on his wife's grave, who taught his son that love was weakness and family was liability. Mia's voice softened. I couldn't let you do that to our children. Dorian set down his glass, bourbon forgotten. So you protected them from me. I protected them from what you were becoming, what you chose to become. She pulled out her phone, scrolling to a photo. This is Marcus at 4, asking why other kids have daddies. I told him his father was important, that he had big responsibilities. But I never told him you were more important than he was. The photo showed Marcus building blocks, his face serious with concentration. Dorian's face. Dorian's intensity, but without the hardness that came from years of choosing profit over people. And this is Lucy at 3, drawing pictures of our family. Another photo. Crayon stick figures holding hands. She always drew 4 people, even though she'd never met you. Said families were supposed to have mommies and daddies. You could have brought them to me. When? Between hostile takeovers? During board meetings? You worked 18-hour days, Dorian. Your calendar was booked months in advance. When exactly would you have fit fatherhood into your schedule? The accusation stung because it was accurate. His life had been a series of appointments, each one more important than the last. No room for spontaneity, for children's needs, for the messy unpredictability of family. I would have made time. Would you? Mia challenged. Or would you have hired nannies and tutors and turned them into miniature versions of yourself? Taught Marcus that emotions were weaknesses, and Lucy that love came with conditions. I'm not my father, aren't you? She gestured to the office around them. Look at this place. It's a shrine to everything he valued. Success, control, isolation. You even kept his bourbon. Dorian followed her gaze to the portrait dominating one wall. Alexander Crestwood in his prime, cold eyes surveying his domain. How many nights had Dorian stood before that painting, seeking approval from a dead man who'd never learned to love? He died alone, Dorian said quietly, and you were heading for the same fate, until Lucy got sick and forced you to choose. Mia's voice gentled. I didn't come to your boardroom for money, Dorian. I came because our daughter was dying and she deserved to know her father before... Her voice broke. Before what? Before it was too late. For both of you. Tears tracked down her cheeks. The experimental treatment has risks, serious ones. If it fails, if we lose her, I couldn't live knowing she'd never met the man who gave her those stubborn eyes and that fierce heart. The truth hit him like a physical blow. Not just that Lucy was sick, but that she might die, that his daughter, the child he'd spent 6 years not knowing, could be taken before he'd learned her favorite color or bedtime story. What are her chances? The question scraped his throat raw. 70% success rate. But the treatment is aggressive. Her immune system is compromised. Any infection, any complication. Mia wiped her eyes. The doctors in Switzerland are the best in the world, but they're not miracle workers. Dorian sank into his chair, the weight of 5 years' worth of mistakes crushing down on him. I could have lost her without ever knowing she existed. You could still lose her. Mia's honesty was brutal and necessary. That's why I brought them today. Why I risked your anger, your rejection, your world falling apart. Because time isn't guaranteed, and she needed to see that her daddy was real. And Marcus needed to see that you were human, that the father he'd built up in his imagination was just a man who'd made terrible choices. She moved to the desk, placing her hand over his. He's angry, but he's also hopeful. Children forgive easier than adults. Do they? Dorian looked at their joined hands. Do you? I forgave you years ago. For my own peace, not yours. Mia's touch was warm, familiar, devastating. But forgiveness isn't the same as trust. And trust isn't the same as love. What would it take? The question escaped before pride could stop it. To earn back what I threw away, I don't know. Her honesty was both crushing and liberating. The man I loved in Prague was passionate, driven, but still capable of tenderness, still able to see beyond the next deal. That man might have been a good father. And now you're here instead of saving your empire. You chose Lucy's bedside over a board meeting. You let your company fall rather than abandon your daughter. She studied his face. Maybe that man is still in there somewhere. Outside, the city hummed with late-night energy. Inside, 2 people who'd loved and lost and found each other again sat in the ruins of everything they'd thought they wanted. I don't know how to be a father, Dorian admitted. Neither did I know how to be a mother. We learn as we go. Mia stood, smoothing her dress. The question is, are you willing to learn? Really learn? Not just write checks or hire help, but show up every day, even when it's inconvenient. Yes. The answer came without hesitation. Whatever it takes. Then come home with us. To Switzerland. Be there for Lucy's treatment. Let Marcus see that you're more than a suit and a signature. She paused at the door. Let me see if the man I loved is still worth saving. After she left, Dorian sat alone in his father's office, surrounded by the monuments to a life built on the wrong foundation. Tomorrow he'd face the media circus, the board's triumph, the empire's collapse. But tonight, he had a choice to make. The same choice his father had faced and failed. The same choice that had defined 3 generations of Crestwood men: love or legacy, family or fortune, the throne or the heart. For the first time in his life, the answer was clear. And if someone revealed children you never knew were yours, would forgiveness even be possible? Drop your thoughts as you follow along with rich billionaire romance stories. The pancakes were a disaster. Dorian stared at the smoking mess in the hotel kitchenette, smoke alarm shrieking overhead, while Lucy giggled from her wheelchair and Marcus shook his head with 6-year-old disappointment. "Daddy, you're supposed to flip them, not burn them," Lucy explained patiently, as if teaching a particularly slow student. "I know how to flip pancakes," Dorian lied, waving a dish towel at the alarm until it finally stopped. "These are blackened. It's a cooking technique. It's called failure," Marcus corrected, but without his usual venom. "Mom makes them golden brown. Your mother has had 6 years of practice." Dorian scraped the charcoal remains into the trash. "I've had 6 hours." Mia emerged from the bedroom, hair still damp from her shower, and surveyed the kitchen carnage. "Should I ask?" "Daddy tried to make breakfast," Lucy announced. "He's not very good at it." "I'm learning," Dorian defended himself, then caught Mia's amused expression. "Don't. Not a word. I wasn't going to say anything." But her smile said everything. "Room service?" "Room service," he agreed, defeated by breakfast food. 20 minutes later, they sat around the sweets dining table with proper pancakes, Swiss chocolate, and fresh fruit. Lucy picked at her food. The treatments affected her appetite, while Marcus methodically ate everything on his plate. "So," Dorian attempted, "what do you want to do today? Before your appointment this afternoon?" Lucy brightened. "Can we see the lake? Mommy said there are swans. If you're feeling up to it." Mia checked Lucy's color, her doctor instincts never fully off duty. "The fresh air might be good. What about you, Marcus? Anything you'd like to see?" His son considered the question seriously. "Do they have tall buildings here, like your tower?" "Some, not as tall as New York, but impressive." Dorian hesitated. "Would you like to see them?" "Maybe." Marcus pushed eggs around his plate. "Are you going to build towers here too?" The question carried weight beyond its words. "Are you staying? Are you planning a life here? Are we worth more than your empire?" "I'm not building anything right now," Dorian said carefully. "I'm just trying to be here. With you. For how long?" The directness of childhood, cutting through adult evasions. "As long as you'll have me." Marcus studied him with those 2 knowing eyes. "What if Lucy gets better? What if we don't need you anymore?" "Marcus," Mia warned gently, "it's okay." Dorian met his son's gaze. "That's a fair question. The truth is, I hope you won't need me. I hope Lucy gets completely well and you both grow up strong and independent. But I'd like to be around to see it happen. Even if it's boring, even if we're not sick or dramatic or important." The question revealed so much about how Marcus saw the world, that attention came through crisis, that love was conditional on need. Another failure to add to Dorian's growing list. "Especially then," Dorian said, "I want to see your soccer games and school plays and terrible art projects. I want to help with homework and argue about bedtimes and embarrass you in front of your friends." Lucy clapped her hands. You want to be a real daddy. I want to try to be the daddy you deserve. After breakfast, they ventured out into Zurich's crisp morning air. Lucy rode in her wheelchair. The treatments left her weak, while Marcus walked between his parents, occasionally reaching for Mia's hand but keeping careful distance from Dorian. Lake Zurich stretched before them, pristine water reflecting snow-capped mountains. Swans glided across the surface like living sculptures, and Lucy watched them with wonder. They're so pretty, she breathed. Like princesses. Swan princesses, Dorian agreed, pushing her wheelchair closer to the water's edge. In fairy tales, they're usually under enchantments. What kind of enchantments? Well, Dorian searched his memory for stories his own mother had told him, before his father had declared fairy tales frivolous. Sometimes they're princesses who've been cursed to be swans during the day. Only true love can break the spell. That's silly, Marcus interjected. Swans are just birds. Magic doesn't have to make sense, Lucy said seriously. That's what makes it magic. They found a bench overlooking the water. Lucy dozed in her wheelchair, exhausted by the short walk, while Marcus pulled out his ever-present sketchbook. What are you drawing today? Dorian asked. Marcus hesitated, then showed him the page. It was a building, tall, angular, reaching toward the sky. But unlike his previous architectural attempts, this one was crooked, listing to one side like it might topple over. It's your tower, Marcus explained, but broken. The image hit Dorian harder than any board revolt. His son saw him as broken, damaged, unstable. Why is it falling down? Because that's what happens when you build too fast, when you don't make the foundation strong enough. Marcus added more lines showing cracks in the structure. Mom taught me about foundations. She said buildings are only as strong as what holds them up. What holds up a good building? Love, Marcus said simply. Family, people who care about each other. Your tower doesn't have any of that. Dorian studied the drawing, seeing his empire through his son's eyes. All height and ambition, no depth or stability. A monument to loneliness disguised as success. Could we fix it? Dorian asked. Add a better foundation? Marcus considered this seriously. Maybe. But you'd have to tear down the broken parts first. Start over with the important stuff. What's the important stuff? Us. Marcus looked up from his drawing. If you really want to fix it, Lucy stirred, blinking sleepily. Are we talking about buildings? Daddy's tower, Marcus explained. I drew it broken. That's sad. Lucy studied the sketch. Can I draw too? Marcus handed her a crayon, and she began adding to his architectural disaster. But where he'd drawn cracks and instability, she added flowers growing from the broken places, stick figures holding hands around the base, a sun shining down with a smiley face. There, she announced. Now it's not scary anymore. What did you add? Dorian asked. A family garden. So the tower won't be lonely. She pointed to her additions. And people to take care of it. And sunshine because everything grows better with sunshine. The simple wisdom of a 6-year-old, seeing hope where others saw ruin. I like your version better, Dorian admitted. Me too, Marcus agreed, surprising them all. Maybe broken things can be fixed if you add the right stuff. That afternoon, at the medical center, Dorian sat beside Lucy's treatment bed, while machines hummed and beeped around them. The experimental therapy was aggressive, chemicals designed to rebuild her immune system from the ground up. Daddy? Lucy's voice was small, made smaller by the medical equipment surrounding her. Yes, princess. When I get better, will you teach me about buildings? Real ones, not just drawings. If you want to learn, I do, but not the broken kind. I want to learn how to build the kind that lasts forever. That's okay. We have lots of time now. She squeezed his hand with what little strength the treatments had left her. Right? Right, Dorian promised, meaning it more than any contract he'd ever signed. We have all the time in the world. Outside the treatment room, Marcus sat with his sketchbook, adding more details to their collaborative tower. When Dorian emerged an hour later, his son showed him the latest additions: windows with curtains, a front door painted bright red, and tiny figures visible in the rooms. "Who are they?" Dorian asked. "Our family. See? There's Mom in the kitchen, Lucy in her room with all her stuffed animals, and me in the library reading." Marcus pointed to each figure. "And there's you. Where am I? Everywhere. In all the rooms. Because that's what daddies do. They're everywhere their family needs them." For the first time in 6 years, Dorian Crestwood felt like he was exactly where he belonged. The rain started during Lucy's afternoon treatment, Swiss clouds opening with sudden intensity that sent pedestrians scrambling for cover. Dorian and Mia stood under the medical center's awning, watching water cascade from the sky while their daughter underwent another round of experimental therapy. "We should have brought umbrellas," Mia said, pulling her jacket tighter. "I could call the hotel, have them send a car, for a 10-minute walk." She smiled, the expression transforming her tired features. "When did you become afraid of a little rain?" "When I started wearing $1,000 suits everywhere." Dorian looked down at his casual clothes, jeans and a sweater Mia had insisted he buy. "Though I suppose these are more weather appropriate. You look different in normal clothes. Younger. Less." She searched for the word. "Intimidating?" "Human," she finished. "More like the man I met in Prague, the man from Prague. Before empire building consumed him, before his father's ghost whispered that love was liability. That version of himself felt like a stranger now, someone he'd buried under years of hostile takeovers and board meetings." "Lucy's session should be finished soon," Mia said, checking her watch. "Marcus is probably driving the nurses crazy with questions about the equipment. He wants to understand everything. Takes after his mother. His stubbornness comes from you." But there was warmth in the accusation. Yesterday he spent an hour interrogating Dr. Kellerman about immune system reconstruction. The poor man looked exhausted by the end. They'd fallen into this routine over the past week, shared observations about their children, careful conversations that skirted the deeper issues between them. It felt like learning to walk again, testing each step before committing weight to it. "The rain's letting up," Dorian observed. "Still coming down pretty hard. We could wait it out, we could." But neither moved toward the door. The truth was, these moments had become precious. Stolen time when they weren't focused on treatments or medications, or the careful choreography of co-parenting, when they could just be two people who'd once loved each other, trying to figure out what remained. "Remember the storm in Prague?" Mia asked suddenly. "Our last night there? How could he forget? They'd been caught in a downpour after dinner, running through cobblestone streets while thunder rolled overhead. By the time they'd reached their hotel, they were soaked and laughing, and he'd kissed her in the elevator, with rain still dripping from her hair. You said rain was good luck, he remembered. My grandmother's superstition. She claimed every storm washed away old troubles, made room for new beginnings. Mia's smile turned wistful. I was so hopeful that night. I thought we could weather anything together. We were different people then. Were we? Or did we just stop trying to be those people? The question hung between them like the rain, persistent, impossible to ignore. Mommy, Daddy, Lucy's voice carried across the lobby as she emerged from the treatment wing, Marcus pushing her wheelchair with the serious concentration he brought to everything. Look what I made. She held up a paper flower, crafted from medical gauze and colored with markers the nurses had provided. It was lopsided and slightly damp from her small hands, but she beamed with pride. It's beautiful, Princess, Dorian said, accepting the gift with the reverence it deserved. I made it for you. Because you stayed. Her simple words carried the weight of every promise he'd broken, and every chance he'd been given to make things right. The rain stopped, Marcus announced. Ever practical. We can go home now. Home. The hotel suite had become that somehow, not the penthouse in Manhattan or the estate in the Hamptons, but wherever his children were. They walked through Zurich's old town, Lucy insisting on getting out of her wheelchair to splash in puddles, despite Mia's protests. Marcus documented everything in his sketchbook, adding raindrops to his architectural drawings. "Careful, sweetheart," Mia called as Lucy jumped in a particularly large puddle, sending water flying. "It's just water, Mom. It won't hurt me. The treatments make you more susceptible to—" "Let her play," Dorian said quietly. "She's been in hospitals and hotel rooms for weeks. She needs to be a kid." Mia started to argue, then stopped, watching their daughter's joy. "You're right. I worry about everything now. Every cough, every fever, every sign that the treatment might not be working. That's what mothers do. What parents do." He touched her arm gently. "But she's stronger than we think. When did you become the voice of reason?" "Since I realized that protecting them from everything isn't the same as keeping them safe." They found a small cafe with outdoor seating under a striped awning. Lucy ordered hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, while Marcus studied the menu with the intensity of a food critic. "I want what Daddy's having," Marcus announced. "I haven't ordered yet." "Then I'll wait. We should have the same thing. That's what fathers and sons do, right?" The casual assumption of connection, of shared experience, hit Dorian unexpectedly. Marcus was trying, in his careful way, to build the relationship they'd never had. "Right," Dorian agreed. "Fathers and sons stick together." They ordered coffee and pastries, sitting under the awning while Zurich came alive around them. Lucy chattered about the swans they'd seen that morning, while Marcus sketched the cafe's architecture with growing confidence. "You're getting really good at that," Mia observed, looking over his shoulder. "Daddy's been teaching me about perspective and foundations. He says every building needs a strong foundation or it falls down." "Smart Daddy," Mia said, but her eyes were on Dorian, not their son. "Smart teacher," Dorian replied. "I'm learning as much as I'm teaching." A comfortable silence settled over them, broken only by Lucy's occasional exclamations about her hot chocolate and the scratch of Marcus's pencil on paper. "This is nice," Lucy said suddenly. "All of us together, like a real family." "We are a real family," Mia assured her. "I know. But now we look like one too." Lucy's observation was matter-of-fact, but it carried the weight of years spent explaining why her family was different from others. Dorian reached across the table, covering Mia's hand with his. The touch was tentative, a question rather than a claim. She didn't pull away. "We do look like a family," he agreed. "Are we going to stay together?" Marcus asked, his directness cutting through the moment's sweetness. "After Lucy gets better? After we go back to America?" The question they'd all been avoiding, wrapped in a 6-year-old's need for certainty. "We're going to try," Mia said carefully. "Being a family is complicated when people live in different places, have different lives." "Then change your lives," Lucy suggested with the simple logic of childhood. "Make them the same place." "It's not that easy, sweetheart." "Why not?" Marcus joined his sister's campaign. "Daddy doesn't have his company anymore. You don't have to work in New York. We could live anywhere." "Where would you want to live?" Dorian asked, genuinely curious. "Somewhere with swans," Lucy said immediately, "and tall buildings for Marcus to draw, and good hospitals in case I get sick again, and somewhere Mommy and Daddy can be happy," Marcus added, his wisdom beyond his years. Mia's hand turned under Dorian's, their fingers intertwining naturally. "That's a tall order." "We're good at tall orders," Dorian said. "We built 2 pretty amazing kids. We did, didn't we?" Mia's smile was soft, vulnerable. "Despite everything we did wrong, maybe we got the important things right." The rain had stopped completely, leaving the world washed clean and gleaming. Puddles reflected the afternoon sky, and the air smelled of possibility. "Can we walk by the lake again?" Lucy asked. I want to see if the swan princesses are still there." "Of course, princess." As they gathered their things, Mia leaned close to Dorian. "Thank you. For what? For staying, for trying, for being here when it matters." Her breath was warm against his ear. "For being the man I hoped you could become." "I'm not there yet." "No," she agreed. "But you're trying. And that's enough for now." They walked toward the lake, Lucy skipping ahead while Marcus documented their route in his sketchbook. Dorian and Mia followed, hands linked, testing the fragile trust growing between them. The swans were still there, gliding across the water like living poetry. Lucy watched them with wonder, and Dorian found himself hoping that some enchantments could indeed be broken, that love, given time and patience, could transform even the most damaged hearts. The laptop screen showed 12 faces arranged around the mahogany table Dorian had once commanded. Margaret Chen sat in his chair, his father's chair, while the board members who'd built their careers on his vision now prepared to bury him. "Dorian," Harrison's voice carried across the Atlantic with weary disappointment. "Thank you for finally joining us." "Harrison, Margaret, everyone." Dorian adjusted the camera angle, making sure they could see him clearly in the hotel suite sitting area. Behind him, Lucy's artwork covered the walls, crayon drawings of Swiss mountains and stick figure families that meant more than any corporate acquisition. "We've been patient," Margaret began, her tone suggesting otherwise, "but the shareholders are demanding answers. Stock prices have dropped 30% since your family revelation. The Castellan merger is dead. 3 major clients have terminated contracts. I'm aware of the financial impact. Are you?" Richard Blackstone leaned forward. "Because from where we sit, it looks like you've abandoned the ship entirely. Living in Swiss hotels, playing house with your secret family while your company burns. My daughter is receiving life-saving treatment. My children are getting to know their father for the first time. I'd hardly call that playing house." Touching, Margaret's sarcasm could have cut glass. "But sentiment doesn't pay dividends. The board has voted. We're removing you as CEO, effective immediately. You can retain your shares, of course, but operational control transfers to me." Dorian had expected this moment for weeks, yet hearing it still felt like a physical blow. 3 generations of Crestwood leadership ended by his choice to be a father. "I see. And the company's direction under your leadership? Aggressive expansion. We'll acquire the assets from the failed Castellan deal at a discount, restructure the European operations, and restore investor confidence." Margaret's smile was predatory. "Within 2 years we'll have erased the damage your personal drama caused." "Personal drama," Dorian repeated the phrase, tasting its bitterness. "Is that what we're calling a man choosing his dying daughter over a board meeting?" "We're calling it poor judgment," Harrison interjected. "The kind of weakness your father warned against. Alexander built this company by keeping personal and professional separate. You've let emotion cloud your business sense. My father died alone in that boardroom, clutching his chest while you all watched. Is that the legacy you want to preserve?" Uncomfortable shifting around the table. Even sharks had limits to their coldness when confronted with truth. "Your father built an empire," Margaret countered. "You're destroying it for children you barely know." "Children I barely know because I was too much like him." Dorian stood, moving to the window where Zurich's skyline stretched toward the Alps. "Tell me, Margaret, do you have children?" "That's irrelevant." "Do you?" "2 daughters. But I don't let motherhood interfere with—" "When did you last have dinner with them?" "Not a business dinner, not a charity function. Just you and your daughters, talking about their day." Margaret's silence was enough. "Richard, Harrison, any of you?" Dorian faced the camera again. "When did you last choose your family over a deal? When did you last leave a meeting because your child needed you?" "This is exactly the kind of emotional manipulation," Margaret began. "This is exactly the kind of question my father never asked himself." Dorian's voice carried new authority. Not the commanding presence of a CEO, but the quiet strength of a man who'd found his true purpose. And it's the question that's going to reshape how I define success. You don't get to redefine anything, Richard snapped. You're out, Dorian. Finished. Your voting shares aren't enough to override the board's decision. You're right, they're not. Dorian smiled, and something in his expression made several board members lean back. But my father's trust fund shares are. The silence that followed was deafening. What are you talking about? Harrison's voice cracked. The Alexander Crestwood Memorial Trust. 45% of company shares held in trust until his heir demonstrates the wisdom to lead with both strength and compassion. Dorian quoted the will from memory. The trust's board of directors has been watching my leadership for 7 years, waiting for me to prove worthy of my inheritance. Margaret's face had gone pale. That trust was dissolved years ago. No, Margaret, it was dormant, waiting. Dorian pulled out his phone, showing a document on screen. This morning, the trust board voted unanimously to release those shares to me. Apparently, choosing my daughter's life over corporate profits finally demonstrated the compassion my father never learned to show. The boardroom erupted, voices overlapped, accusations flew, but Dorian continued calmly. Combined with my existing shares, I now control 68% of Crestwood Enterprises. Which means, Margaret, you're fired. You can't. I can. And I am. Richard, you're demoted to assistant CFO. Harrison. Dorian paused, looking at his mentor. You have a choice. Adapt to the new direction or retire with full benefits. What new direction? Harrison's question carried genuine curiosity beneath the shock. Family-first leadership, flexible schedules for parents, paid family leave that actually encourages people to use it. Corporate policies that recognize employees have lives outside these walls. Dorian's voice gained strength with each word. We're going to prove that a company can be profitable and humane. That's business suicide, Margaret protested. That's evolution. The old model, my father's model, created wealth but destroyed souls. I won't perpetuate that legacy. The shareholders will revolt. Some will. Others will see the value in sustainable leadership. Companies with happy employees outperform those built on fear and exhaustion. Dorian moved back to the camera. We're going to be the first major corporation to prove that family values aren't just marketing slogans. And if you're wrong? Harrison asked. If this idealistic experiment fails, then I'll fail as a father who tried to build something better for his children, not as a CEO who sacrificed everything for profit margins. Dorian's conviction rang through the connection. I'd rather lose an empire than lose my family again. The door to the suite opened behind him. Lucy appeared, still weak from her morning treatment but smiling as she approached. Daddy, are you talking to the mean people from your work? Several board members winced at the innocent description. I am, Princess. We're discussing some changes. Good changes or bad changes? Good changes. Changes that mean Daddy can spend more time with you and Marcus. Lucy clapped her hands, then noticed the laptop screen. Hello, mean work people. Daddy's not going to let you be mean anymore. The boardroom's collective discomfort was palpable. Faced with the actual child they dismissed as personal drama, even the hardest hearts seemed to soften slightly. Lucy, sweetheart, why don't you go find Marcus? I'll be finished here soon. Okay, but don't let them make you sad, Daddy. You're too nice to be sad. After she left, the silence stretched uncomfortably. That's why I'm doing this, Dorian said quietly. Not for revenge or spite, but because she deserves a father who chooses her over everything else. Because Marcus deserves to see that success doesn't require sacrificing your soul. Your father would be ashamed, Margaret said, but her venom had lost its bite. My father would be proud that I learned from his mistakes instead of repeating them. Dorian began closing the laptop. The new policies take effect immediately. Anyone who can't adapt to family-friendly leadership is welcome to find employment elsewhere. Dorian, wait. Harrison's voice stopped him. What about you? Will you be returning to New York? Eventually. When Lucy's treatment is complete, when my family is ready. But when I do return, it won't be to the same company. It'll be something better. Something worthy of the legacy I want to leave my children. And if the company fails under this new philosophy, then we'll build something else. Together. As a family. Dorian's smile was peaceful, certain. Success isn't measured in stock prices, Harrison. It's measured in the people who love you enough to stay. He closed the laptop, cutting the connection to his old life. Through the window, the Swiss Alps rose majestically, their peaks touching clouds that promised more rain. But this time Dorian wasn't afraid of storms. Behind him he heard Lucy's laughter mixing with Marcus's serious explanations about architectural principles. Mia's voice joined theirs, creating a symphony of family that no boardroom had ever produced. For the first time in his adult life, Dorian Crestwood felt truly successful. What would you choose? Protecting the empire you built, or the family you almost lost? That's the question rich billionaire romance stories dares you to ask yourself. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom, painting Central Park in shades of pink and white that rivaled any Swiss mountain vista. Dorian pushed Lucy's bicycle training wheels, finally removed after months of practice, while she pedaled with the determined concentration she brought to everything. "Daddy, look, I'm doing it!" Lucy's voice carried pure joy as she navigated the path without wobbling. "I see you, princess. You're amazing." Marcus jogged alongside them, no longer the guarded 6-year-old who'd protected his family from disappointment. At 8, he'd grown into his role as big brother and junior architect, his sketchbook filled with designs for the family home they were building in Connecticut. "Can we stop at the pond?" Marcus asked. "I want to sketch the bridge from this angle." "Of course." Dorian checked his watch's simple steel piece, not the platinum Rolex that had once marked every billionaire minute. "We have plenty of time. The luxury he'd never understood when he'd measured life in quarterly reports and stock prices. Now it flowed differently, marked by Lucy's laughter and Marcus's questions, by quiet moments with Mia and the slow rebuilding of trust. They found a bench overlooking the pond where model boats sailed like miniature dreams. Lucy abandoned her bicycle to chase pigeons, while Marcus settled into serious sketching mode. "The arch needs more support," he muttered, erasing and redrawing. "Bridges have to be strong enough to hold everyone who wants to cross." Smart observation. Dorian sat beside his son, watching the boy's careful attention to structural details. What else makes a good bridge? It has to connect things that belong together, and it has to last through storms. Marcus looked up from his drawing. "Like you and Mom. The simple wisdom of childhood, cutting straight to truth." Dorian and Mia had indeed been building bridges, between past and present, between hurt and healing, between the people they'd been and who they were becoming. "Speaking of Mom, where is she?" "Getting coffee. She said you need caffeine to function properly." Marcus grinned. "Her words, not mine. Your mother knows me well. She loves you. Even when you're grumpy in the morning, love." The word that had once terrified him now felt like coming home, not the desperate, possessive emotion his father had warned against, but something steady and sustaining, built on daily choices and small kindnesses. "Daddy!" Lucy ran back, breathless with excitement. "There's a swan. A real one, just like in Switzerland." Indeed, a lone swan glided across the pond, elegant and serene among the model boats and urban chaos. Lucy watched it with the same wonder she'd shown at Lake Zurich, when they'd been strangers learning to be family. "Do you think it's magic?" she asked. "All swans are magic," Dorian assured her. "They remind us that beautiful things can exist anywhere, even in the middle of busy cities. Like families? Especially like families." Mia appeared with coffee, and the smile that still made his heart skip. 18 months of rebuilding had softened the edges between them, replacing wariness with warmth, suspicion with something deeper. "How's the bridge coming along?" she asked Marcus, settling beside them. "Almost finished. I'm adding extra support so it won't fall down during storms." Very wise. Mia handed Dorian his coffee, their fingers brushing in the familiar dance of long partnership. Strong foundations are everything. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children explore the world with fearless curiosity. Lucy had been declared cancer-free 6 months ago, though regular checkups remained part of their routine. Marcus had started asking about siblings, wondering if their family might grow larger. The board meeting went well, Mia asked quietly. Better than expected. Profits are up 12%, employee satisfaction is at an all-time high, and we've been featured in 3 business magazines as a model for family-friendly corporate culture. Dorian sipped his coffee. Turns out treating people like humans instead of resources is good for business. Who would have thought? Not my father. But then he never learned that the strongest empires are built on love, not fear. A year and a half ago those words would have felt foreign in his mouth. Now they were simply truth, proven daily by the life they'd constructed from the ruins of his old existence. Lucy, Marcus, 5 more minutes, Mia called as the children ventured toward the playground. Can we come back tomorrow? Lucy asked, already planning their next adventure. We can come back whenever you want, Dorian promised. That's the beauty of living in the same city as the people you love. The Crestwood family home in Connecticut was nearly finished. A sprawling but warm house designed by Marcus's 8-year-old imagination and refined by actual architects. It would have gardens for Lucy, a library for Marcus, a medical office for Mia, and a study for Dorian that faced the garden instead of a concrete jungle. Ready to head home? Mia asked as the children returned, grass-stained and glowing with fresh air. Ready, Dorian agreed, though home now meant wherever his family was, not a building or address. They walked back through the park, Lucy riding her bicycle with growing confidence while Marcus documented their route in his ever-present sketchbook. Dorian and Mia followed, hands linked, watching their children navigate the world with the security that came from knowing they were loved unconditionally. Any regrets? Mia asked as they reached the park's edge. Dorian considered the question seriously. A year and a half ago, he'd commanded a corporate empire worth billions. Now he ran a smaller but more sustainable company, lived in a hotel suite while their house was being built, and measured success in bedtime stories and family dinners. Only one, he said finally, that it took me so long to realize what actually mattered. Better late than never. Better late than never, he agreed, squeezing her hand. The collapse of his old life had indeed rebuilt him into who he was meant to be, not Dorian Crestwood, the billionaire CEO, but Dorian the father, the partner, the man who'd learned that the greatest empire was the one built in hearts, not boardrooms. As they headed home, the spring afternoon painted everything in golden light, and Dorian Crestwood felt richer than he'd ever been sitting alone on his throne. Sometimes life has to break us down completely. Do you agree? Share your thoughts and keep following rich billionaire romance stories for more powerful journeys like this one.